122k. It's a 50-50 fracture, and I get 2 chances, so it's like a 75% chance, right? Surely. Surely you don't fuck me, Vesper. What the fuck? What is that? That's so bad. Hello Exiles, and welcome to my showcase of a Tristack Inquisitor. It's an archetype I've been meaning to play for a long time, but only now landed on a PoE I'm satisfied with. It's quite fast, and largely a one-button build. I'm using Reave, which can get almost screen-wide AoE with pretty much zero investment, thanks to Reave, which is a very fun button to press, and with 3 charges and only 2 seconds soul gain prevention, you do get to press it quite often. Single target is serviceable, but nothing insane. I get about 15 million or up to 20 mil with Tincture, realistically more with Rage and Frenzies from Blood Rage, and going up to 40 mil boss DPS with a 2-gem Blade Flurry swap. Defensively, it's got a 10k pool with EB Mind Over Matter, 1.5k regen, Life and ES Leech, Fortify, Suppress Cap, Near Block Cap, and Arctic Armor. It's comfortably clearing most content in the game on a roughly 100 divine budget. It's hard to say exactly because I crafted all the gear, but I do try to overestimate my build costs. I'm looking to move on to a new build, but there are a couple other directions you could take this build, so let's talk about it. Okay, a PoE review. I'm an Inquisitor, some pretty standard Tristack pieces. Righteous Providence caps my crit. Cyclopean Coil gives a lot of damage scaling, 1% damage per 5 of your lowest attribute. This plus the attribute mastery gives another 1%. Shaper's Touch gives a bunch of life, accuracy, mana, and most importantly in this build, energy shield per strength. Because I'm an Inquisitor, I figure I may as well take the Consecrated Ground node, and this node that gives life regen also recovers energy shield. So I'm dual scaling life and energy shield. There's 2 ways you can go about this as an Inquisitor. You could get a glorious vanity with corrupted soul that gives some life as ES, and it also makes half of your non-chaos damage bypass ES. So with Inquisitor double regen, you kind of double up in that way. I chose to go EB Mind Over Matter, as it's another way to split it, and it also solves all your mana costs from the energy shield. And you'll notice my life recovery is significantly stronger than my ES recovery because ES Leech is only baseline 10%, while Life Leech is baseline 20%. To offset this, Mind Over Matter, by default 40%. So the ideal ratio of your mana is 2/3 of your life, so I have 6k life. The ideal mom ratio would be 4k ES, but you see I have a little bit extra just to make sure I don't get damaged to the point where I have no ES and can't use any abilities. The other big unique Tristack piece is the weapon. So my initial idea was I wanted to use a double influence rare claw like this with like cold per dex and lightning per int. I thought that would be a cool idea because Inquisitor ignores resistances and just, you don't really see anyone using a weapon like this. But unfortunately, in the end, Hawa is just really, really good. Especially with the Foulborn version, it gives you percent attributes, crit multi per dex, and a very strong base damage scaling per int. So I have about 1200 strength and dexterity and 1500 int. Some extra scaling on that because once you cap crit, more scaling into strength and dex isn't that good, so I focus a little more on int. As for how I'm getting my attributes, a lot of pathing on tree to each of these 3 attribute notables down here, here, and here. I have a large cluster, 35 effect attributes, attack speed, and claw damage. It's very good. Magebane helps me cap suppress, very good for a tri-stacker, and I get a bit more strength from a lethal pride in this position with an unnatural instinct. This gives me some move speed, some block, some res, and of course some extra strength. And the lethal pride also has some double damage here and here. So most of my strength is coming from this and from tree, so I fill out a bunch of extra dexterity and intelligence from suffixes on gear. 2 suffixes here, 1 here, 2 here, 2 here, and here. So with all of these suffixes taken by attribute rules, how do I cap resistances? Well, I don't have a Mage Blood because, well, Mage Blood is hard to fit, not only because of the cost, but because it's just really hard to replace Cyclopean. It is doable, but we can talk about that in a bit. And so the answer I landed on was Adorned. I'm using a 70% roll, which is pretty cheap, and honestly, you don't need any more for this. This is the best bang for your buck you're going to get. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 jewels with 10 all-res suffixes and a mix of life and crit multi prefixes. These jewels are really cheap to craft. Nobody cares about the all-res fracture, so they're like 5C each. And yeah, I think I spent maybe a divine or two crafting all of these magic jewels. This does make it so that every other unique jewel really has to pull its weight in order to be worth it. So for example, I don't use any split personalities because they're just not that worth. And the last significant sources of attribute scaling is a helical. This is probably the single most expensive item in the build, but you can actually buy a fracture for not that much more than a clean base, and then the actual craft is maybe a divine or two of essences. It's a lot easier because I don't care about the prefix. You could get some life or some ES or elemental damage, but it's really not that big a deal. And the amulet, the new percent attributes talisman with into essence, all attributes. I didn't go for percent attribute suffix because I wanted chaos res, and then I happened to Shaper Slam damage per int. Damage per dex is perfectly fine too, but int is better. And unfortunately, I did forget to use the Gilded Fossil tech to get a implicit, and then you can re-roll it to a random Eldritch implicit with one of the Ducats from the League. Tinctures are very strong, but the thing is, since I'm EB Mind Over Matter, I still need to get some kind of mana recovery to be able to use this. So what I do is you have to leave a little bit of mana unreserved, and then I get Mana Leech from a cluster. My other flasks are mostly utility, Quicksilver with some regen, Bismuth for overcap comfort while clearing, Amethyst Flask, and a Silver Flask. For my links, Reave in the 6th link, which you can swap to Blade Flurry for bossing. Reave is at about 15 mil, Blade Flurry is about 30 mil. Some auras here and there, nothing too major to mention. Haste just feels really nice. Arctic Armor is pretty nice defensively. You could also do Flesh and Stone instead for generic less damage taken in melee range, but since I'm using Blood and Sand for damage, you want Blood and Sand to be in Blood stance for damage, but Flesh and Stone wants to be in Sand stance for defensiveness. It's a trade-off, it could go either way, but I chose Blood and Sand. And then Spectres, so I'm actually running a Spectre, Perfect Spirit of Fortune, gives a small Wrath aura, and more importantly, gives me lucky lightning damage. Tawa is already a very high damage range, 1 to 12, and I'm also using Volatility and taking this new Keystone, which is just pure profit for any lightning build. So yeah, lucky damage is very strong. These Spectres are decently tanky in this 4-link with 3 defensive supports. Very important to get quality on minion life. It's increased minion life on the quality, but since this build has no other sources of increased minion life, it is a separate multiplier and very strong. So these Spectres have 50k life. They are fairly tanky, but they are also kind of stupid. These Spectres in particular, it's a Kuduku totem thing. They don't move other than lightning warp, so they can get stuck on things occasionally, and it's really important to use a convocation automation. Not only does this prevent them from getting stuck on things, but it also gives them some regen. Especially, it pulls them into my consecrated ground regen, and that's a lot of their sustain. So Ray Spectre, you get 2 Spectres, but I'm just using 2 Perfect Spirit of Fortunes just for a little redundancy in case one dies. You could get a Perfect Warlord, which would be very good. It has a Vitality aura, which you could maybe replace the Vitality here with, and more importantly, it generates endurance charges for you. So that could be a very strong defensive option. You can see the difference here, but I just don't feel like it. Now, another option you could do is a General's Cry setup in like a 4-link. If you don't want to fully swap to Blade Flurry for a single target, you could just run Reave and then fit in a 4-link here. General's Cry Auto Exertion Volatility is best in slot, and you can see it's 14 mil DPS, roughly doubles with the Reave. The only thing is you have to fix reservation and you have to cut some sockets. You could probably shuffle some things around if you really want to do this. And one more thing to note is General's Cry, you do need corpses. So that's fine for clear, but in pure single target, you do need a Desecrate. But the thing is, General's Cry doesn't consume the corpses, it just needs the corpses to be there. So you could probably just have a Desecrate in the weapon swap, cast it once or twice at the start of a boss fight, and you're good. That's about all. And I guess I'll just quickly go over the gear again. Weapon, Valborn Hand of Wisdom in action, pretty much impossible to beat. Shield is a big block shield. It's probably better to recombinate something like this, but I kind of just brute forced it with a Fracture and some essences. So this plus Tempest Shield plus these little block nodes here and this block wheel here gets me to 75-62 block. Of course, getting that little bit extra to cap spell block would be really nice, but since I have suppress, it's not as important. Helmet is the one and only suppress roll I need to cap suppress, thanks to Magebane again. Body armor, this was another kind of brute force with a Fracture and essences. Bit of a settle. It has T1% and like I think a T2 hybrid percent. Obviously T1 flat would be better. It gets to like 900 something ES. But since I'm already over the mom ratio, it's not that important. And then an attributes craft, which in an earlier version of the build is a suppress craft to help cap. Shaper's Touch, not much to say here. I have an Enfeeble on hit for defensiveness because there's not really a great curse to use. Because I'm an Inquisitor, I ignore resistances, and I'm already crit capped. The only real damage curse to use is Punishment, but that's inconsistent, so I don't really like it. There is another option, since the only one really important mod on the Shaper's Touch is the Energy Shield per Strength. You could get that as a Vestigial on some other unique gloves, like for example, Tanuahi, which can give you some Adrenaline and Onslaught in single target scenarios. I haven't tested this. I'm not sure how consistent it is, but it's an option if you want. Boots, ES, Dex, Int Life, pretty standard. Amulet, talked about this earlier. Same with the Helical, Calandra's Touch, and Cyclopean Coil. And right, so the elephant in the room is a Mageblood. Cyclopean Coil gives a lot of damage scaling, 1% per 5 lowest attribute. That works out to 237 in this build, so yeah, cutting Cyclopean is pretty hard to justify, but of course Mageblood is very strong. I've theory crafted it a little bit, so the trade-off is basically Mageblood gives you a lot of speed and helps you res cap, which means I can replace these resistance rolls with more crit damage rolls or maybe some attributes, something like that. In the end, it seems like the damage is about the same as Cyclopean Coil, but you get a lot more utility out of it. So endgame, it's probably worth it, but as I mentioned earlier, I think I'm done with this build for now. Speaking of endgame upgrades that I'm not going to get around to is a Simplex. Yep, self-explanatory. And also I should mention, since Hala is best in slot, there is a version of the build you could probably do that is Hand of Thought in Motion into Accuracy stack. It's still very good, I'm sure, and it would probably be more damage in the end as a pure int stacker, but that wouldn't really be the same build now, would it? So yeah, overall, I'm quite happy with this build. Finally got around to doing a tri-stacker of some kind. I've probably made a dozen or so POBs in the past couple of years, but yeah, I'm quite happy with this one. It's very fast, very tanky, very comfortable. As I mentioned earlier, I'm looking to move on to the next build, probably some kind of Spark. I'm deciding between either Luminary or a Reliquarian with Doriani's prototype and full Taken as Fire. I think that'd be really cool. And I also just really want to play Spark. I've never done that before. So yeah, if you like this build or if you're interested in that Spark idea, do stick around. I'm trying to stream more consistently. No promises. Maybe once or twice a week I'll try to commit to, but yeah, thanks for watching, Exiles. See you next time.